because that's the fun part. I'm going to take this one first because, it's an easy, uncontentious subject where Gohan had called in to talk Heathen with questions about abortion. And I figure this is such an easy topic. We should just start the show with it. So, plus I asked him to call. So how you doing, Gohan?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
I'm all right. I think I think I can short circuit this without you having to go through your 6 questions and all of that, because.
Well, before you do that, I just want to say thank you for your service going in the Navy. That's not something I was brave enough to do, and I'm still of age to do it. I'm just not brave enough to do it.
I don't consider it brave at all. I was literally 18 and out of other options and did it, and I was in for like 8 years. But I appreciate your thanking me.
You put your life on the line for me, so thank you.
I'm not convinced I actually put my life on the line for anybody, but that's a fantasy that somebody's built up in your head. But anyway, I appreciate that. On this, so I've already, you talked about you'd seen the debate that I did with Christian Kruszelnicki, and of course, my view of abortion rights. I don't really particularly care whether somebody thinks it's moral or immoral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
I'm more concerned with whether or not it's legal. But if we're going to have this conversation, you came up with what is, in my mind, a fairly common objection to the bodily autonomy thing. Because my view is, does anyone have the right to use someone else's body without their consent? And if the answer is no, then a fetus, even if it was in there doing calculus and going to solve cancer, it still doesn't have the right to use a woman's body without their consent. And you came up with the conjoined twins example and a particular version of it where you have 2 conjoined twins and one of them can survive without the other, but the other one's dependent on it. And the response to that's a simple question, or a couple simple questions. Is a woman born...
Going crazy.
Your dogs are going crazy. It must be my high-pitched voice.
No. There's another dog outside. Okay.
I don't know. Your phone keeps kind of going quiet with all that. So, is a woman born pregnant?
No.
Okay. So the difference is that when those conjoined twins are born, while they are separate persons with separate brains, they are born interdependent, and they don't have the right to establish ownership over their shared body independent of the other one. And so that's why it's a flawed analogy when we're talking about a woman who becomes pregnant. Because abortion,
I feel like
abortion is not the right to. Sorry, what?
I was saying, like with pregnancy, almost any analogy is going to be flawed.
Exactly. So let's stop using them and let's actually talk about the case in fact.
So you're against using analogies?
If the analogy is flawed,
just kind of with this example.
If an analogy is flawed, not all analogies are flawed to this extent, but if you're in agreement that you're not going to be able to come up with an analogy for pregnancy that is going to lead us to a conclusion about pregnancy, then let's stop using them. And why not?
No, yeah, I didn't say that. I said all analogies are not like the exact same, but I think it can lead us to a conclusion, especially about bodily autonomy.
Except that it can't.
I would say that you said before that bodily autonomy, there's no situation where you can have someone use somebody else's body without their consent. I would say this is a situation. So
no, you're not. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. This is the point where the analogy is flawed. This is what I'm trying to point out. A woman isn't born pregnant. There wasn't a situation where the 2 individuals, where one of them had rights that were co-opted by another. When you talk about the conjoined twins, they were born, both of them having equal claim over the shared portion of the body. And that is why the analogy is flawed, and it doesn't apply to pregnancy. Sorry, what?
Do you think the claim of who has more rights over their body switches depending on dependency?
Who else has right over my body?
Nobody has right over somebody else's body.
So dependency doesn't matter.
Correct.
So then
this is the whole point. Hang on, pause. This is the whole point of the violinist argument. If I'm kidnapped and hooked up to someone, they don't, and their life is now dependent on mine. I'm kidnapped by somebody, and they hook me up to that other person to the point that that person's life is now dependent on mine. That doesn't put an obligation on me. I may choose to stay hooked up to them or not, but under no circumstances am I obligated to remain connected to that person because they don't have a right to use my body without my consent.
Yeah, and that's kind of going along with other arguments that I've heard you make before.
Yes, because I'm consistent.
Courts with people not having to donate or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
But conjoined twins are different because it's not one twin using another's body. It's two people with one shared body that they have shared rights.
No, but it wouldn't be a shared body.
It is a shared body. That's conjoined twins. By definition, it's a shared body.
What do you think it is if it's not a shared body?
If they're not dependent on each other, if one is not...
If they're not dependent on each other, then they can be separated. And we've separated conjoined twins that are joined by just...
What if one is dependent while the other is not dependent?
Then the one that's dependent is dependent on things that are that agent's body. It's a shared thing.
His body or hers, right. So in that case, it is coming down to dependency because the one...
No, it's not coming down to dependency. It's coming down to the fact that, okay, here's two people who are born conjoined, but they share a heart. They both have equal claim to that heart.
Okay. So what if, as they develop, they become adults and now actually only one twin needs the other to survive and the other could survive without the other twin?
Okay, you're not paying attention. The one...
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little lost with your...
I figured this was going to be incredibly easy, but you're not paying attention. These are two thinking beings that share a part of a body. The fact that one of them doesn't necessarily need something other than what they would leave with... How do you... If it's one heart, let's say, how do you determine which one you're going to give the heart to? Because I can cut these... Hey, stop. The fact that the heart may be... Jenna and I are now conjoined twins, and she's the only one with a heart, because I'm a heartless motherfucker. The heart is in her chest. I'm dependent upon that heart. She is not dependent on anything that happens to be in my chest. But our bodies are conjoined. That is my heart, and it is her heart.
Right.
This is why this
is sounding pretty darn close to fetus mother.
No, it's absolutely not.
So hold on. So is a fetus born with my heart if I get pregnant? Does that fetus have... If I get pregnant right now and I have a baby, does that fetus share my heart?
It relies on your heart.
But does it have my heart? Is my heart part of that fetus's body?
Was there a time when Jenna did not have a fetus in her that was reliant upon her heart?
Yes.
Was there a time that one of those conjoined twins was not dependent on the heart that they're sharing?
Yeah, in this example...
No, there's not.
That now they are not dependent on the other heart.
No, you're not paying attention. Was there time when one of those twins was not dependent on the heart that they share?
Yes.
No, there wasn't.
When?
When was that?
It's right. So in this example, I'm saying right now, it's not dependent on the other one's heart.
You just said that one of the two isn't dependent on the other's heart, but it's not the other's. The other one doesn't. They are sharing a heart.
Right.
So when did the first fetus not share that heart? When did it have something other than that heart?
It's the only heart it's ever had.
When did the fetus?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting lost with the two analogies.
Sorry.
When did the fetus not have that heart?
Mm-hmm.
When did the conjoined twin not have that?
One of the twins. You're saying, hold on, you said that one of the twins
not share the heart.
Okay, this is becoming rapidly a waste of time. There are
there's too many analogies.
No, the analogy's fucking flawed, which is what I was trying to point out. There is no point. Oh my God, shut up. There was no point.
Why are you being so rude?
Because
I'm trying to explain something and you keep interrupting. There was no...
I feel like we've had a pretty productive conversation.
I don't.
I don't. Does anybody out there think we've had a really productive conversation? Because I explained something that's incredibly simple. And because you have a bias where you are trying to argue against a position, you're not seeing the simplicity of this. Here, a woman and a fetus, two separate entities. The woman existed completely independent, was never dependent upon a fetus, never had to share anything with the fetus. The fetus comes along afterwards and attaches itself to her, and now it is completely dependent. And now it is using another person's body without their consent. When in the case of conjoined twins with a shared heart, both people require that heart and always have. It wasn't like one person walked up and attached them to somebody else and said, I'm now going to use the heart that was yours. That heart was never Jenna's. It was ours.
So I think if I can try to sum up, you're saying the problem with the analogy is that in the past, with the fetus is always dependent on it. But with the conjoined twins, no.
No, what he's saying is that the twins were born together, and me and the fetus would not have been born together.
Okay, so in the past, the mother was not dependent on the fetus.
Correct.
In the
The mother's never been dependent upon
the mother is not dependent on any fetus.
And at one time, there was no fetus.
So, but with the problem with my analogy is that in the past, forever, the two twins have always been dependent on each other.
The problem with your analogy is this: two twins, one heart. You are assuming that heart belongs to one and not both.
Well, I didn't say it's the heart. I mean,
whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's a brain. Maybe that's the problem with this call. Right. Are you sharing a brain with somebody?
Or a body or anything. The fact is that they were born together.
I'd be happy to share a brain with everybody.
Okay.
I mean,
but thanks. We're done. I figured this would be a really quick and easy thing because the analogy that you came up with is horribly flawed. The only thing that I'm saying with respect to abortion rights and legality is about whether or not a person has a right to use somebody else's body without their consent. And you come up with an analogy that is, well, what about conjoined twins in this particularly weird situation where if we were to separate them, one would survive and one wouldn't? Well, the reason one wouldn't is because they were born, both of them dependent upon that heart. And you seem to be deciding that geography, that the heart is in Jenna's chest, means that we can, we could separate and Matt would die, but we'll leave the heart in Jenna's chest. Well, why don't we just separate, but pull that heart and put it in my chest? Because I have just as much claim to it, and that's the thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a heart or whatever the thing may be. Now, the thing is, he can't get over this flawed analogy. There are really cool issues related to that analogy outside of that. One example is that if we can separate conjoined twins where neither of them are dependent on something that is geographically located separate from the normalized body container, we do separate them. But what happens if Jenna and I are conjoined twins and things that are in this part of the geography are going to kill us both unless we separate and allow Jenna to live? Do we have a right? Does Jenna have a right to force that separation? Because if we don't separate, we both die. And if we do separate, Jenna lives. Now, I think all of us would agree that I would be incredibly selfish to say, nope, if I'm going to die, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. And so I think most of us would say, by all means, separate and you go on about your life. But the question then becomes, does Jenna have the right to say, I'm separating from you because it's going to kill me if I don't, even though it's going to kill you? That is an interesting moral quandary that we may or may not have a good answer to.
But it's not as simple as, and it's not as common as pregnancy.
But it's not like, hey, here's every woman, every cis woman or any woman with ovaries and the ability to reproduce, running around constantly facing the prospect that at any given time, whether it be through unprotected sex or a failure of birth control, they
sexual
wind up
assault.
Pregnant. And people like you want to argue that they are now forced to serve as a life support system for that entity. And one of the problems here is that these same people also trivialize pregnancy because, gosh, it happened to, everybody. My mom had to be pregnant in order to have me, and infant mortality rates and deaths from pregnancies have dramatically declined as our medical knowledge has increased. So obviously pregnancy is trivial. But the truth of the matter is pregnancy is not trivial. It fundamentally changes a woman's body forever. And you're overlooking all the consequences related to actually having and taking care of a child, or, well, you can give it up for adoption. You don't get to use that argument.
Not everybody can.
Yeah. The issue here is even if it's a person, which I don't necessarily think that a cluster of cells should qualify for personhood, but personhood isn't the issue, which is why people arguing in favor of abortion should stop using it and rely, in my opinion, on bodily rights. Because, like I said, even if it's in there doing calculus in the womb, that's going to lead to a cancer cure for the entirety of humanity, that still doesn't give it the right to use a woman's body without her consent. And that's why I started the show with it, because I knew that'd be really easy.
Good call.
It only took like 20 minutes, nothing to it. We've solved abortion.